So let me just get going. First of all, love the partnership that we have with you all. I want you to know I am a regular. My family and I are regular consumer of onions, and it's not just because of fast food like Big Macs or the like. I mean, my wife and I celebrate Margarita Friday, and it's always a fajita because of the bed of onions underneath the steak. So I'm a regular, and I practiced that Friday, even though I was supposed to be in the air on Saturday morning. So I want to thank you for the partnership. I also want to compliment the entirety of the Onion Association because some of the things you're trying to do in looking at new markets, just enormous applause to all of you. And the fact that you're looking at a couple of programs that you have not participated in before, the Emerging Markets Program, EMP, and the Technology Assistance Program, the TASK program, I think are ready made for groups like yours. So just from a programmatic, how do we use taxpayer dollars to help you all from that standpoint? I like the direction that this is taking, and we want to do anything and everything we can to help those of you who produce onions, and some I suspect in the room are marketing and processing. So whatever you might have in terms of touch points on the value chain, we're all in, particularly the technical assistance, specialty crops program, the TASK, and the EMP or the Emerging Markets Program. Also want to make sure you know the phone is always open. The door is wide open most days, I guess. And this virtual type conference is always available for you all. So if there's any follow-ups that you all want from this discussion, please do not hesitate to follow up with me, Sharon or Greg or whoever might be the contact, because we're all in. In fact, the team has been making fun of me. It's all in good spirit, I think, but we've got a theme that I have way overdone, but it still holds true, and that is there is no stone unturned with this groups. Whether it's the Onion Association or anybody else, if we can sell one more container of product, and it's only one container, that's one more than we were going to have before. So we're all in. I want you to know that despite all the frustrations, the to and fro of tariffs and will we or won't we have the China market and how much are they buying and all of that kind of thing, it looks like we will be up over across all of U.S. food and agriculture when we close out and look back on the calendar year. And so far, it's looking good as we enter next year. And China is a great big part of that. In fact, this year, it's projected to end at 140.5. That's 140.5, and that would be up 4.6 billion. And then imports will be looking to go up, but only modestly, 2.8 billion. So I like the trend lines there. And you all, if you ever wondered how much your work is involving, we have down as 279 million in exports. And 152 of that went to, you guessed it, Canada, and 59 million went to Mexico. So not unlike a lot of your brethren and sisterin in food and ag trade, our partners to the north and the south are our key focus. Let me just speak about USMCA, because if those are your two primary markets, let's just hit those head on. First of all, USMCA is a much better deal than NAFTA, including for agriculture. And I admit and I profess that I was one of those saying, no, don't blow it up. Ag, it's been good to ag. Ag has been served well amongst the three countries. Well, that was true for agriculture, but it may not have been true for other parts of commerce, like autos and auto parts and the things like that. So I was worried that ag would lose and other sectors would gain, but no, we gained across the board. I don't know if there's any of you that are involved in the dairy industry, but they probably are the big winners. Now, I read in Politico today, that's one of the inside DC rags, that there may be a case coming against Canada by USTR because they're doing funky stuff with milk. We do believe they are. My team and I are the ones really closest to and watching that. And so I'm not here to say whether that's true or not. That was rumor that we picked up, but it would not surprise me if USTR brought a case under USMCA to address the whole dairy situation, because we're going to hold them accountable, period. We're going to hold them accountable. And notwithstanding my love and respect for our friends to the north, you know, you're either truthful and you're good for your word, or you're not. And the signs are very clear that at least with dairy, they're not. On the other hand, we're hearing good things about the wheat trading. You may or may not be aware, but if wheat on this side of the border went north, it was declared feed grade. That same variety could have come from the same bag. Coming south to the US, it was considered food grade. So our exporters going north, at least in wheat, we're getting the short end of the stick. And so we're watching that, but so far that looks good. And so far it looks like the wines and distilled spirits, ours going north, are getting better treatment than before. So we want and we need you all to keep us informed about how trade is going with our friends in Canada and our friends in Mexico, because they are our good partners. And I mean that sincerely. They are terrific trading partners. Sometimes brothers and sisters and good friends have these kinds of issues, and we are for sure going to address them, because we're not going to slide away like we have been over the last many, many years. So the two-way trade with Canada and Mexico combined was $92 billion. So you are a small part of that, but it's nonetheless a very, very important part. And I'm very pleased with USMCA and where that's going. I'm getting a lot of questions these days about trade with China. Mostly, are they going to meet the phase 1 agreements, or are they not? And the honest answer is we don't know until February 1, when we get the final data from China and we get the final data from the US Department of Commerce. And then that is what looks in arrears and tells us that what had been unloaded at the port in different ports in China by December 31, and therefore what's been paid for, and that will be our number. I suspect we will be short of the $36.5 billion that they had committed to purchase. And that's disappointing, particularly when there are many things they could then and still could be buying. Ethanol and DDGs, a lot of crops like yours in the fruit vegetable area. Other things like that make up some of the groups that we think could have been purchased in greater quantity. But before I get all angry and blow up what I think is turning out to be a lot of healthy purchases in this last 3 quarters of the year, let me just remind us all, though this thing was signed on January, I think it was 13th of this year, it was not to go live for another 2 months. Part of that is because there were a lot of technical agreements that my colleagues in APHIS and my colleagues in FSIS had to complete. Well, they worked on that and they met every single deadline. My colleagues in APHIS and FSIS and their counterparts in China did not miss a single deadline of the first 50 technical agreements that had to be resolved. And that has opened up our market to China in a sum total of 100 or 200 or more processing plants. Many of those meat, poultry, dairy, but it involved products in plants that even could perhaps cover onions. So that's the first thing. They did not miss a single deadline. That meant they were having meetings at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 6 p.m., and they lasted for several hours. And I know that because I sat in on many of them. So I'm pleased at both parties' work in that area. The next thing, though, is we saw COVID hit China very hard. And then we all know what happened. It came here and it hit us hard. And through all of that, ports were shut down, processing plants were idled for a while. And the net result is that a lot of containers were stuck in the many, many, many ports of the Asia Pacific area. And even if we wanted to, we did not have the containers to fill. So that delayed us till about April 1, April 15 is when things really started picking up. So I'm not going to be ungrateful and start moaning and complaining that we didn't get nearly what we wanted. We are already setting records. And today, in fact, this last month was an all-time high record in the history of the Foreign Ag Service for many crops, some which you might produce as well: corn and soy, sorghum, pork. And so we're going to take what we get, and we have been about every week, certainly every 2 weeks, reminding our friends with China, here's where you could pick up the pace. And we do have those conversations, and you'll be pleased to know it's a friendly conversation. There's a fair amount of trust with those at USTR that are having those more regular conversations with China. If there's any good news that can come out of this delay, it is the fact that a lot of sales that would have been made in 2020, counted toward this year, are already going to be recorded as an early and very aggressive head start for the next calendar year, Jan 1, December 31, 2021. So I hope it continues. And I've talked to my friends in China, hoping that maybe we can take food and ag and just set it off in a corner and say, let's don't worry about that. Let's don't do a tit for tat there. Food, as you know, sustains life. It sustains human life. It sustains the life and the growth of pork, beef, poultry, dairy, etc. So I don't know that that's going to go very far, but I've made the suggestion because they need us, we need them. Let's just set that aside, among other things, and let other things get in the way and take the focus of the oxygen. I want to touch on new free trade agreements we're working on. The first is the UK, the second is Kenya. The UK is much further ahead than Kenya, partly because our friends in Kenya, several on the negotiating team caught the COVID bug. Looks like they've all survived, thank heavens, but it set it back a couple of months. UK goes full speed ahead. Now, right now, we seem to be at a lull. We have finished 5 rounds, and we're waiting on the next one. But in the meantime, they're trying to hurriedly finish remaking an agreement with Canada. And then we think we're next, but then there's Europe in there. And oh my gosh, the European UK battles are ferocious. It's not unlike centuries gone by when the French were fighting the UK and so many others were, and vice versa. The one thing you'll be pleased to know about, the only one thing, one marker, if I can say, that the UK has put out there is the marker on their animal welfare standards. They've drunk a lot of the Brussels Kool-Aid, and I understand that, but I think they are clearly wanting to get out from under that choking noose of Brussels regulations and the no science approach that Brussels seems to be taking these days, because they're going through great pain to make Brexit work. And they will do that. I don't think it's going to change in the next 15, 20 days. So we'll have to see what happens. And it's getting to be a very late hour. But I remain bullish. And I know that USTR, along with some of my team that are doing the negotiations with the UK, we're all feeling better than not, acknowledging all that while that we have not hit that last couple of stages where it really can get tough. But I'm more optimistic than not. And they know that we have some things that they might want, a passage of a small ruminant rule that would allow sheep and goat to come here more freely. There are other things unrelated, not competitive to onions, that we think are in the mix. And so I'm more optimistic than not. I am as pessimistic as I am with Europe as I am optimistic about our relationship with the UK. I thought the Brazilians were the most self-righteous people in the world, and they are easily eclipsed by our friends in Europe. I hope this doesn't come across as sacrilegious, because I'm a very faith-based person, but it's almost like we, Europe, are the way, the truth, and the life. You may do trade in ag and trade policy in ag, but through me. It's that bad. We have tried for 7 years to increase our ag and food exports to Europe, and every time, and it's been voluminous, many openings that are achieved, all of a sudden get closed because of some ridiculous sanitary, phytosanitary issue. this whole business of the precautionary principle, which basically says we're not taking any risks. None, zero. If there's a risk and somebody says it's a risk and we're not going to do it. And the risks are usually coming from groups like Greenpeace. Well, what the hell do you think they're going to say? So the net is that it's very, very problematic with Europe. And then they've just introduced the Farm to Fork initiative. This is essentially the brand name on their EU Green Deal. They're calling for a 50% ban on pesticides, a 1/3 mandatory reduction in fertilizer, and a complete elimination of the use of antibiotics, even if it's just a single shot for a bird or a pig or a cow that's coughing and wheezing their guts out. The answer is no, with no flexibility. And we know that because they've done this before. When they say no to their farmers, you will no longer use half of the pesticide arsenal that's been made available to you, they take away the maximum residue level as well. Which, let's just say, those of you up in Wyoming, you've got some wheat and some small grains up there, some biotech crops. It would basically say if there is 1 part per quadrillion, 1 part per centillion, if there's any detect of something like glyphosate or other products that you might use, the answer is no. It cannot be and will not be imported. So we're taking them on. It's unpleasant. It's not fun. I love my friends in Europe. My parents' family is from there about 10, 12 generations ago. The same with my dad's side, dads and moms. And it's not pleasant, but if we don't stymie this now, we are all in for one bad experience. You're probably all aware of the Panama technical regulation on imported onions, and my team are all over it. I've talked to our Foreign Ag Service folks that are down there. Now, Panama is operated out of Costa Rica, but Anita, our head Foreign Ag Service person, has been spending more of her time in Panama than her own home in Costa Rica. So don't you worry about whether the Foreign Ag Service is dedicated or not. They are, and they're living it by virtue of where they plant themselves, even if it means being away from family. We are committed strongly to enforce the trade agreements at the WTO and via our own trade promotion agreement with Panama. In many ways, it's a sad situation. And the reason I say that is I've made 2 treks to Panama. This was early on. This was late 2017 and early 2018. And under that administration, oh my gosh, it was an exciting time. We saw a lot of positive momentum of straightening out these little things that just hang up trade so badly. But administrations change. We're seeing that now. And I will not speak for our country, but in their case, it was for the worse. It has made a lot of this more difficult. Protectionism has set back in, as it had been for many, many years before. But not to worry, we have taken it to the WTO. We have had other countries join us, and we will not let Panama put up these false trade barriers based on some ridiculous sense of timing on when the harvest was made. I get it. We catch the dickens as well from many of our growers about why some competitive product is allowed in, particularly during the harvest season when we're trying to get it out of the field, refill bins, warehouses, and the like. I get it. But you either are or you are not a member of the World Trade Organization, and that's why we need to follow those rules. And if you want, I'm happy to come back later if you have an interest in giving you my assessment of where we are going with the WTO. The next thing I want to talk about is the inspections at the Canadian border. The process that's supposed to be in place is identical north of the border and here. Each country is to pre-inspect before anything goes south or north. And then it's fairly quickly re-inspected. That's the way it's supposed to work. Based on good feedback that you all provided to us, we learned that some onions coming south were not following those rules. They were not checking in with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And so our colleagues down the hallway, Undersecretary Greg Ibaugh and his colleagues in the Ag Marketing Service, determined that there were several violations. So whatever you all reported or however we got that information, they validated that it's true. To fix that, AMS has been doing spot checks. No calling ahead, we just show up, or my colleagues just show up. And the good news is they did some spot or surprise inspections in the month of October of this year, and the compliance was at 100%. So I hope that continues. Certainly our colleagues in AMS intend to sustain the spot checks, but we hope that that will be an indication that we're not going away. We love you friends to the north. We love our friends to the north, but we're not going to let you guys cheat like you have a tendency to do. And they do. I hate saying that, but they do. It's what they're trying to do with dairy again. They may try it again with onions. And at least while we're here in this administration, we are all over that because we're not going to let cheating and what we got passed through USMCA, we're not going to let it backslide. Let me just see. I want to talk about some other markets. I talked earlier about a couple of programs that we have, the Emerging Markets Program, the Technical Assistance Program, the MAP and FMD programs. That's the Market Access Program, Foreign Market Development. Just for good measure, I'll throw in the ag trade missions that we had planned to take last year. Well, this year we had 8 planned. Last year was 7, the year before was 6, and every year before that was 3. Occasionally, every now and then they squeezed a 4th one in. So you can see that we had more than doubled those big ag trade missions where your representatives, maybe some of you companies or farmers could go to whatever country or countries we were visiting and talk and actually make sales of onions and onion products. Well, COVID came in and we've been grounded. I was at 430,000 international air miles in March of 2020, and it came to an absolute screeching halt. At least the international air miles did. So we turned to the technologies like this. They're working. They're not quite as good, but everybody's getting ready and figuring out how to do this. And they know that we have to continue these discussions. So where am I going with this? I want you to know that the Secretary's creation of this standalone position that I hold, the first time ever that we've had an Undersecretary dedicated to trade and foreign ag affairs. Coupling to that, the Foreign Ag Service has moved back into its traditional mode of being focused big time on trade promotion, trade policy, getting stuff out of our borders and into somebody else's borders. That's what we're doing. Now, for good measure, there were a few years during the whole Afghanistani, Iraqi, and Irani conflicts that we pushed a lot of people into capacity building. In short, teach African farmers to grow something other than poppies. The list is long, but a lot of our people were dedicated to that, and we switched back, partly because the problem is not as critical in those countries, but moreover, when we're now now we're going on 7 years of depressed farm economy with limited growth in trade and exports, it's time to refocus on the mission that created the Foreign Ag Service. And that's what I'm honored to lead. And boy, we are doing that. We still have a couple of capacity building programs and we love them. We take them seriously, but we're doing it because Congress said USDA and the Foreign Ag Service, you will do these 2 programs. USAID has the others. So we're very dutiful about honoring that commitment. So I think opportunities of great magnitude. I'm so excited about the Asia Pacific area. I can't stand it. I was planning 2, if not 3 additional trips to Vietnam, the Philippines, 2 to Taiwan, 1, if not 2 to Indonesia, and it's at least 1 to Malaysia, not to mention the possibility of Singapore, Myanmar, and others. Why? Well, those folks are rising in the middle class in terms of how much income they earn. And the middle class there is nothing like it is here. It means they're starting to earn $4 to $5 a day or more. And when that starts to happen, they have a little bit more disposable income. And you know what they do with it first? They buy nutrition for the kids. Education and improved education follows very quickly behind. And my, oh my, is Vietnam and the Philippines and Indonesia, are they buying? They are really buying. So the second reason, in addition to income opportunity, is that they know and want to trade with China. But they've also begun to see very clearly that a heavy and intense trade session with China has a very evil and long IOU tail with a barbed wire on the end. And they don't want that. They want to be friends with the US and with China and very, very many other countries. And so we have seen them reach out to us a great deal more than they had before. And it shows in our exports. And I'm thrilled. So if those countries meet your area of desires for export, let us know. Let's dive in together. We're all in. I have to say that I also think we should work hard on the Western Hemisphere. Now, we already know that Canada and Mexico are your two largest markets, but think south of there, because we have got to keep the Western Hemisphere aligned. Right now, they are very much aligned under the Costa Rica-based regional trade organization. It's an ag trade organization called IECA. And boy, oh boy, are we aligned on pushing back on Europe, on China and others who want to undermine biotechnology or other new technologies in crops and in critters, as I like to say it. So the other reason is China is knocking on a lot of doors. They have warships they want to port somewhere, and the Western Hemisphere, we all think, and I know you would agree, we want that to be an off-limits kind of thing. Europe, we're working on it. Notwithstanding how deeply frustrated, even angry I am, my view is we still have to keep negotiating, but we're not going to give away the store to meet their ridiculous new and cumbersome standards. We're just not going to do it, but I still remain hopeful. And you heard me talk about China already. Oh my gosh, if year 2 minus COVID issues, or at least minus significant COVID issues like occurred there and here, I think we're going to see the possibility of a very strong 2021 with our friends there. I'm going to close on India. Oh, it's a tale of two cities, or a tale of two countries. Yes, I still take 3 Valiums every morning when I'm going to deal with India all day. You need every ounce of patience you've got. No sweeteners. Oh my gosh. Sweeteners and caffeine, in addition to frustration when dealing with India, is not a good cocktail mix. That said, I still believe we should all be working hard on India. Our two countries have a very strong relationship in the Department of Defense, you know, armaments and the like, intelligence exchange, very strong. And if we can ever help India realize that they're not going to be self-sufficient, and it would be stupid if they tried, I think I look at India a little like we looked at Japan and Germany and other parts of Europe after World War II. I'm a World War II buff. Things were decimated. It took the Marshall Plan amongst their own pull yourself up by your boots philosophies to get them to the trading partner point that they are now. And I think India can be the same. And holy smokes, does that represent a great opportunity. So I'm going to close on that one because I want you to know I am not Pollyannish, and most of you know Pollyannish means wildly, inappropriately optimistic. Not Pollyannish, but I am bullish that if we can keep China sales going and keep fixing trade problems that exist in parts of the world, I used the EU as the prime example, I do believe we're going to have a pretty good future. And remember the megatrend of megatrends. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet now, and we're going to 10 plus or minus by 2050. That means we have to double food production. We have to double food production, and that includes onions. So that is not going to change, and we don't want starvation to settle in. So some way, somehow, we're going to meet that as a globe. And that's what I think bodes well for all of agricultural and food production in the U.S. So Sharon and Greg, I'm going to stop there because I really would like to take the questions, and I'll make my very best attempt at some answers. How's that?
That works just fine.
Okay.
has a question. I'm going to have to probably repeat it to him because we're working off my computer. So, Doug, try it.
How's that?
Okay. No questions? Lynn has a question.
So how do you see the new administration that's coming in? How will that affect trade with China?
I think I heard you say, how do I see the new administration coming in and how they work with China? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be careful here because I'm a very strong believer in the witnessing of smooth transitions, and I don't want to speak for them. But let me just reflect on some things that I have read. My sense is that strength and showing strength to China so that they do not continue their nefarious ways is still on their books, on the docket, and I would endorse that. Trust me, I hate tariffs, period, particularly when they last as long as they have. But I have to remind you that the reason those were imposed was because China was doubling, tripling, quadrupling steel and aluminum production, subsidizing all of that by the Chinese government with the very intent of driving countries out of business, leaving it to them. I hate to use this example because I actually admire Walmart, but let me give you the example. It's like a big superstore Walmart coming into a relatively small or mid-sized town. Eventually, the hardwares and the grocery stores, and sometimes the general 5 and 10 cent, now $1 and $2 stores can't make it. And that's what's happening. And our industry was on life support. We were down to 3 of 5 major smelters that were operating efficiently. The other 2 were on life support. So even we, as the or a superpower in the United States or in the world, we're facing real problems because we're a free market. You may wonder, for example, why the president got so angry at South Korea at the very time that Kim Jong-un, the so-called rocket man, was putting rockets into the Sea of Japan. It was very simple. We've had our young men and women on the demilitarized zone at the 38th parallel in Korea since 1953, not to mention the lives lost prior to that. South Korea, Kia and Hyundai were buying their steel and aluminum from China. How about us? You know, what's the deal? Why are you supporting a country that's trying to put you and us both out of business? And so those 2 examples illustrate the problem that we have with China. So I believe there will be a strong stand. The president-elect speaks of making sure it's in coalition with everybody else. I surely hope that can be done because that is right. I believe Mr. Trump chose to go unilateral because the WTO was and still is broken badly. And it could have gone 4, 5, 6 years before there was any results. So he chose to go unilateral. And let me just tell you, we have fixed a lot of problems. We were not welcome in Indonesia on my first trip. It's the most contentious visit I've ever had, and it was with my counterpart in the Ministry of Agriculture. Normally, us Aggies get along very well. No. They were betraying a WTO order that said to them they should open up their markets to fruits and vegetables like yours. They were not. They were betraying a WTO order. And so, you know, we had to get tough. But the good news is we're rounding the corner, I think, and I hope, with all of those. So all of that kind of work, I hope that the president-elect and his team will sustain. If I have a worry, it is on Europe, just because when you want to go cozy back up and fall back in love with Europe on many things, in the abstract, a very good idea, but for 7 years, they've been screwing your and my industry. That's not very positive. So I do not know what they'll do, but I've always personally liked the coalition building. I hope they're successful. It will make for a better approach, but it's not easily coming. I'll give you another example. Brazil is They're adding to their ethanol and sugar capacity significantly. They sell us more ethanol than we do them, and yet they're about to put a 20% tariff on our ethanol going down there. What's wrong with this picture? So when you come together as a coalition, you better be sure there's a trust but verify opportunity, because if we decided, as Brazil wants to do, and even I want to do it, go to these other countries to talk about ethanol exports. Let's work this together. We better not see them coming around the back door after we do the joint visit and saying, oh, by the way, Brazilian cane ethanol is better than that corn-based ethanol in the US. And that stuff happens. Let me just tell you, it happens. So if it's fair and reciprocal trade, count me all in and I'll be the biggest cheerleader. If it's not fair and reciprocal, and if all the partners that you come together with aren't playing fairly, and they're noted for not doing so, then you have problems. But I salute the effort and I like the thrust that I'm hearing so far. Implementation's a lot more difficult than the early discussions, as I think any new incoming president would find out. I hope that helps you just a bit.
Any other questions? Anyone?
This is not really a question, but just, you mentioned Europe, and I want to talk about the Dutch onion situation and the fact that they have subsidies for their transportation. And, you know, I've talked to FAS about this.
Greg would like to have you speak. You heard him? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. It's the EU is subsidizing transportation on the transport of onions through Europe. Did I get that right? Just give me a double thumbs up or something. Okay, got it. Well, let me get back to the Foreign Ag Service on that. I was not aware of that one, although it doesn't surprise me one bit. So let me just say I'm fully aligned. We are working very intently, have already begun rolling out our EU strategy, and this would be very logical to add in there. I'll also make sure that as we get all of our transition documents and papers together, our list of grievances against Europe is very long, and I want to make sure that this is right there somewhere toward the top, because they're looking for easy things they can fix, and it shouldn't be very hard, particularly when we are in a tussle on Boeing versus Airbus, that if we agree to quit subsidizing, let's extend that to any and all forms of subsidization. And that is essentially what they appear to be doing. Now, we've got to have proof of that. And so I hope that the Foreign Ag Service has evidence of that, because you can't just go do it based on hearsay. There's got to be evidence. But either way, if it's true, and we'll find out if it's true, this is the perfect time to roll that into our EU strategy, because I think very much we may still do some finishing of negotiations in this administration, but most certainly the next one will be dealing with Europe in many ways. And I hope they don't take a pass. It would be so easy for an administration to say, I'm going to let ag pass. I have too many other things to worry with. Oh my gosh, we cannot let that happen. We're only going to get ag fixed if we stay in the fold, in the mix with all the other issues that we're getting resolved. Thank you for that comment, and thanks for whoever has already reached out to the Foreign Ag Service. If you have a name of someone, get that to Greg or Sharon. I'd like to have that name, and that's who I'll go to for my subsequent discussion.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions.
Okay.
So thank you so much for all the time that you've dedicated to us. I really appreciate it, and very sorry for the late start.
Oh, Sharon, there's no problem there. Goodness me, I'm feeling horrible that I couldn't get there. It's something I couldn't have helped, but I was looking forward to taking another look at those beautiful mountains as I traveled. I was going to drive Denver to Cheyenne, and it's always a hoot to meet new people. I must tell you, I know of the onion industry, but I don't know you well. So it would have been a good chance to either bump elbows or shake hands or whatever is proper protocol these days out there, and have learned more about your industry. So I'm grateful for the opportunity that you've set up here virtually. Are there any last opportunities or questions or comments? I'm wide open. I have nothing scheduled after this.
No, I think that's it.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Greg. Thanks to all of you very, very much. Good luck with the new year.
Thank you. All right. Have a good day, sir.
Bye-bye.